After we know the width of the swatch is how we want it, the next step is to measure the number of rows per inch. And a good way to do that is to start by putting a pin. Again, we want kind of near the top because you want good rows. And I try to mark it so that there's a stitch that's, you're not splitting a stitch, you're clear where the first stitch is going to be. And then you lay your ruler on and you want 3 inches. Make sure that your ruler is lined up with a row of stitches. So it's not like this, cutting across the column of stitches. Make sure that the ruler is lined up exactly with your column of stitches. So I'm going to measure over to 3 inches and then mark where that is. Okay. Now, I like to use my loom tool then to count along with me, and I'm going to count how many stitches are in between the 2 needles. I came up with 32.5 stitches between the marks, and actually then I would normally count again. Once you know how many rows it is for 3 inches, then you divide that by 3, and that gives you your rows per inch. So when I divide 32.5 divided by 3, I get 10.8. So I have 10.8 rows per inch. Once you're done with your measurements, you can remove the pins and then put your yarn back on your yarn winder and wind it up to start your project. The next step is to plug all of that information into the worksheet. So again, I've just printed this out. These are available in our pattern. We're going to start with the total foot length, which is the length that we measured minus 1/2 inch for negative ease. Again, that's to help with the stretch. So we measured 10.25 inches, but then subtracted out, when we measured with the pencil, we subtracted out 0.25 inches to give us 10 inches. If you just looked at the sock chart online, you would have just gotten an answer that the foot was 10 inches long, 10 inches. You don't have to subtract any for the pencil then. And then in either case, we would subtract 1/2 inch for negative ease. So that would be 9.5 inches. And then our rows per inch was 10.83. Okay. So now we're going to multiply the length of the foot times the number of rows per inch. And depending on the stretchiness of your swatch, you might then round up or down 1 row. So I came up with 102.9, and I'm going to put 103 here. So that's our total target number of foot rows. And now we need to subtract out how many of those rows are going to be for the toe and heel, because we're trying to ultimately figure out how many rows we have to crank for the foot to make sure that the sock fits like we want. So the next step is to identify the number of cylinder needles we're going to work for the toe, which is the total number of cylinder needles you have divided by 2. So I'm using a 60 needle cylinder, divided by 2 is 30. And then the number of cylinder needles to work for the heel, so the default is 50%. But if the space on your sock between the bottom of your heel and your instep, kind of that part between your leg and the top of your foot, if that is sometimes tight on your sock and you want it to be more, you could actually work the heel over more needles. So you can go up to 60% of the needles. So you should decide that now so that you can do your math properly. For me, I'm going to go ahead and use 50% of the needles again. So it's 30 needles, just like before. The number of target needles, so again, that's on my cylinder, that's between the pink marks. And you'll see those target needles on the chart. They'll be different for every size cylinder, how many it is. But for me, with a 60 needle cylinder, it's 10. So now we take line D minus line F minus 2. So D is 30, minus F is 10 is 20, minus 2 is 18. And then if you did 50% of your cylinder, these numbers will be identical. But if you change the number of needles over which you're going to work the heel, you need to do the math again. So it's line E, 30, minus line F is 10, is 20, minus 2 is again 18. So finally it says you start with line C, which is 103, minus G, which is 18, minus H, which is 18, you end up with 67. So I'm going to crank 67 rows for the foot in order for my sock to fit. Visit us at deanandbean.com and please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.